You've got to feel the words that you might be reciting. You can't just repeat them. You've got to feel the philosophy. Yeah. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Vedantic. In today's episode, we're talking about the body. And we're going to start off talking about the fact that I floss a lot now. And I can't even believe I'm saying this. Not because it's a strange topic to open a philosophical podcast episode with, but more of just, I never thought flossing was important. I always thought that was one of those corners you could cut in life and pretty much be okay. And now I look forward to it. Why do I floss? It's purely because of this philosophy that I floss. It's because of this philosophy that I pay attention to my body to the degree that I do. You see, with this philosophy, there is an emphasis placed on our three equipments to navigate through the world: body, our mind, and an intellect. Much of this philosophy is around the intellect, developing the intellect of the two inner equipments. Episode 1 talks about this in more detail. But of our two inner equipments, you have the mind and an intellect. The mind is the emotions, the feelings, the preferences, likes, dislikes. The intellect is the clarity to discern right from wrong, what we should do in a given moment. It is our power of judgment, of reason. The intellect is what takes us to the top. It could be the top of your career field. It could be the best in your community. Tennis league. If your intellect tells you you have the natural gifts of tennis, if that's your swadharma, your nature, as they say in the scriptures, that capacity to judge and reason, it's also described as the capacity to see the end in the beginning. It is wisdom. It is wisdom in action. A powerful intellect is making all the right choices throughout the day, seeing the end in the beginning of each decision. This job or that job, this person or that person for a marriage, these people for friends. The intellect loves giving us clarity for what we should do. We don't always act on it. I will call that out, that we rarely act on it because our mind is so powerful and oftentimes just says, no, we should do this. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, I know maybe it's going to have some downsides to it, but we want to. But that distinction between the intellect and the mind, that is a huge, huge part of this philosophy. The cultivation of the intellect at the core, that is what we're doing each day when we study and reflect. But there is often an over-rotation towards only paying attention to the intellect, almost in any spiritual realm, where we're thinking about rules and rites and rituals and thinking about, even though Vedanta has no rites and rituals, no shoulds, should nots. But in any given situation, there is an application of the intellect that can tell us, oh, we should do this in this scenario. We should maybe clean the dishes, do our laundry. We should probably tell the truth in this work scenario. That's the intellect at work. And that power of reason, that power of judgment, discernment, that clarity comes from developing the intellect. Like I said, that is fundamental to living well. Not just a spiritual pursuit, but living well. But we can over-rotate towards that. So many people in the spiritual realm over-rotate towards scholarship. In the Bhajagovinam 1300 years ago, Shankaracharya chastises this spiritual scholar and says, grammar is not going to save you on your deathbed. Memorizing lines of any scripture is not going to save you or your community if you can't feel them. So there's an emphasis. Oftentimes Swami will say, that you've got to feel to understand, and you've got to understand what you feel. A conference between the head and the heart, the intellect and the mind. Because it is so easy to over-rotate towards the intellect. We need to cultivate this conference between the two. You've got to feel the words that you might be reciting. You can't just repeat them. You've got to feel the philosophy. And you also have to understand what you feel. You've got to understand, oh, I'm noticing this agitation. Oh, there's way too much ego into this equation and it's causing me agitation. Oh, there's a desire for name, fame, status. So in saying that you've got to feel to understand, and you've got to understand what you feel, and that there should be a conference between the two. It is taking many of us, if you are inclined to watch a handful of these episodes, many of us that love concepts, that love the intellectual side of things, and saying, no, you really need to cultivate a mind that works with the intellect. This cascades down into the body as well. Taking care of our body. There is a push and a pull. A push to take care of the body because that is your vehicle to travel through this life. Take care of it because you can then become more useful to your community. There's also a pull to take care of it because if you don't, it's going to become a massive distraction. A massive distraction to our spiritual pursuit. If you have unnecessary aches and pains because of neglect of the body. Because many of us, because you might find yourself only living in the head or only living in the heart, but not recognizing the symphony that is the body that needs to be tuned quite often. My teacher, Joseph, he once told me, and we have got another podcast, it's a conversational podcast called Yoga for Your Intellect. It's just our weekly chats, him and me, chatting about nearly everything. And in one of those episodes, and in life outside those episodes, I remember him telling me a few times, try to spend 4 hours a day on your body just for a few weeks. So into literature, reflection, study, contemplation, even building companies, such a cerebral exercise that I didn't pay attention to my body. In my 20s, went to the ER with a heart condition from excess stress and drinking 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day. I thought getting through the day's tasks, making it to the next quarter alive as a CEO was all through cerebral work, through the mind and the intellect. Didn't pay any attention to my body, and what a distraction that became over time. Heart condition that messed with my entire flow, my entire vibe for days on end. Had to have my heart shock back into rhythm. Had to take medication that would correct the heart, but then give me brain fog. Then, after a few years, after 6 years, then I had to get a heart surgery to put things back into rhythm. I still have issues with it because of that neglect. Lower back pain for 3 years in my 30s with little kids because I never really spent time on the body. So what is today's reflection about? It's an overview of our 3 equipments and an emphasis to take care of the body. Take care of any vehicle that is getting you from A to B. If you desire to get to B, then there should be an emphasis on taking care of the vehicle that you plan to use to get there. This body is our vehicle. Taking care of it is not a nice to have. It's actually said in the Upanishads to have firm limbs. Because if we don't, the distraction of a body unnecessarily decomposing right in front of us, it is a distraction from the all-important work of developing our intellect to guide the mind, to move the body, to be useful in our communities, to be useful to ourselves, and all the while, not to be distracted. So if 4 hours sounds crazy, spend 2 hours a day on your body. Walk for an hour. Get sunlight. Spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes at the gym. Spend an hour. But if you're like me and you love these intellectual concepts, there could be an attachment to them that is, as the Upanishads say, attachment to the material world is great darkness. Attachment to the spiritual world is even greater darkness. It could still be an attachment all the same, of the intellectual sort, but an attachment that neglects the body, that then leads to distraction, pain, unnecessary limits to the helpfulness, usefulness we could have in our community. So spend 2 hours just for a few weeks. See how it actually benefits your mind and your intellect, yourself and your community. The physical work around the house, especially lifting up little kids, and the intellectual work that you might do behind a screen. It all goes together. I wish I knew it earlier. Maybe you'll find yourself flossing. And if you already do, kudos to you. You're way ahead of where I was until maybe 2-3 years ago. You'll find yourself taking care of even the tiniest little corners of this invaluable vehicle to take us where we want to go. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.